Welcome back, guys, to the review and discussion for UnOrdinary episode 324. This episode is not the semi-season finale. This episode is I don't know when we're gonna end, but this episode is pretty good, all things considered about it. So let's just go ahead, jump right into this now. Anyway, this episode kicks off with a major boom. So Serafina breaks out. Arlo tries to think of how she got it back, believing that she's still been blacklisted by Spectre. Now, I really hope that with this situation, Arlo doesn't think or convince himself that Serafina is actually still connected with Spectre. He doesn't know the whole situation with Doc. If I think about it, I don't think he even knows that Doc has been kind of taking care and backing everyone up for a bit now. Because I think the last thing he was told was that Remy and Blyke were in good hands. But, nonetheless, Valerie informs us, the audience, that she anticipated that Sarah would have some sort of plan, some kind of backup plan. But she was not at all expecting her ability to be back. Valerie then surrounds everyone, so her, Arlo, Sarah, and the whole a company of bureau agents in multiple barriers of her, encases them in a circle around everyone. And that's really cool, honestly. I really liked that idea. But Sarah is not amused whatsoever. Sarah is just literally just like so unamused, unfazed by everything. She is just like, nah, this week shit ain't enough. But Valerie then sends the great outs after Sarah, and I don't know what she was thinking. Sarah just wrecks house with all of them, one-shotting them as she zooms past all of them, taking them down, even managing to land a hit on Valerie herself, knocking her back and doing some pretty good damage. But one thing that is pointed out by Arlo himself is that Sarah doesn't attack Arlo. So, yeah. So there is that. But yeah, Sarah's basically just like, please, I've handled stronger barriers before. This weak ass shit isn't anything. But she does glance at Arlo, and she glances at him kind of angry, kind of just like, you motherfucker. But as she's doing that, she gets caught in another barrier by Valerie, who then uses the barriers that she formed around everyone to begin fortifying and kind of layer onto the barrier that she trapped Sarah in. That is a really cool concept and something I've been wondering if Arlo was capable of for a long time. So I would be really cool to see if this is a kind of technique that he adopts down the line or at some point. But yeah, I think it's honestly really cool to see how much more mastery of barrier Valerie has than Arlo. It's incredible. But Arlo, realizing that Valerie is going to crush Sarah, yells at Valerie to stop, but Sarah's backup plan, as we of course knew, was none other than Layla herself. Managing to attack Valerie, knocking her back. I don't think that Layla's attack draws blood necessarily. She does knock Layla back, she does knock Valerie back, and Valerie is kind of like, ugh, but she's not coughing up blood or anything like when Sarah attacked her. That was really interesting because I actually was curious if Layla actually could damage Valerie, because we could go with the assumption that Valerie's passive, it could be the same as Arlo's. She could have the invulnerable passive, where weaker attacks on the weaker side don't really do much damage. I'm not saying that Valerie is weak or anything, but Layla is weaker Layla is weaker than Valerie, so it was really interesting. Nonetheless, she still manages to do she does damage. But damage or not, what Layla does manage to do with that attack is get Sarah an opening and break Valerie's concentration so that Sarah can use her speed and power in order to break out of that fortified barrier. And in the process, she does major damage to herself and to Valerie. And we see that Valerie has the same damage effect as Arlo. The panel kind of shatters like glass as Valerie kind of coughs up more blood. But Layla then goes to Sarah, who mostly heals the damage that she's been dealt. But we actually see she's still a bit damaged by the time she finishes. So I wonder, is there some sort of caveat to how Sarah awakened her ability? Is it still momentarily without the major drawbacks to the Spectre's recovery device? Or is this kind of how Sarah's ability works normally? We've never really gotten a clear view of what Sarah's capable of and what her limits are when her ability is untampered with in some capacity. Clearly, there were some outside factors when she fought John just due to her pushing herself too hard while on the recovery machine. Now, if Sarah does just have her ability back now, and this is just kind of like this kind of was pushing her to a little bit of her limit, normally, that would be interesting. But I do feel like it may be a bit too easy if Sarah does just have her ability back, but that's honestly not the point of the episode. Let's get back on track. But, so before leaving, Sarah does tell Arlo that the next time she sees him, he will be her enemy, and that the two of them no longer owe each other anything. Now, Arlo tries to tell her that none of this was his idea, but she disappears right in front of him. The panel focuses on Arlo, who's clearly talking to Sarah, but he just gets a moment of, huh? And Sarah and Layla are gone. I'm pretty sure that they just stopped time and just vanished. It wasn't really necessary for Uru to show us that panel, honestly. Maybe like a moment of Arlo being grayed out, but it's honestly not too big a deal. If Sarah and Layla if they can just stop time momentarily, and it wouldn't really, time itself wouldn't change for Arlo, but for Sarah and Layla, it'd be a few seconds, but in reality, it'd be like a few seconds or so, maybe. For us, it would just be like that. Anyway, so what I really hope is that someone has Arlo's back, because this was not Arlo's idea. Arlo truly wanted to help Sarah. Arlo truly wants to help everyone because he knows his people are not criminals. He knows that they're not. He knows that they're just trying to make things better. He knows why Sarah had to go to Spectre. He knows why Remy is engaging in vigilantism. He knows John's pain. He knows what John's been through. He's starting to finally come to terms and realize why everyone has been set on the path that they have. And he's tried so hard all this time, ever since he got part of the Bureau, to protect everyone as best as he could. And I hope that Sarah either learns the truth or realizes that Arlo didn't sabotage her. I do hope that Arlo explains the situation to someone, most likely John right now, but seeing as how big of hot water he is, I can't see him not telling anyone or deciding not to. Spoiler alert for the latter half of this episode, Valerie does tell him how much he can get in trouble for the things he's doing. Arlo's already in a tight spot, and doing anything else could jeopardize himself. And like I said in my reaction, I honestly can't hold it against Arlo if he chooses to save himself for now, because Arlo has been doing a lot for everyone, and unfortunately, he's getting caught for it. But who knows? I'm sure in time, Arlo will make the right decision. Right now, the person I can see John or Arlo talking to the most, aside from John, is possibly Cassandra. Cassandra has the same sentiment as Arlo when it comes to situations like this. Cassandra truly wanted to help Rain. Cassandra wanted to get Rain that immunity, that pardon. And Cassandra, even after Rain was imprisoned, Cassandra told Rain, I'm sorry, I'm here for you still. If you need help, let me know. Tell the guards to call me. Cassandra isn't a bad person. And like I said, she had a really, really rough start in the series present. But Cassandra is a good person. And I can definitely see Arlo or Cassandra. Arlo noticed that Cassandra was uneasy. He could see she was in distress. I hope that Cassandra can return the favor to Arlo. Next up, we see that the ambulance arrives to take the weaker agents who Sarah attacked, and Valerie notices that Arlo is seemingly relieved, is at a seemingly relieved demeanor at Serafina's escape. Arlo questions why she didn't tell him the truth, and she tells Arlo that he wouldn't have agreed to have her meet with them if she told him the truth. Arlo then asks why she pinned the whole operation on him, and Valerie says it's because she's trying to save him. Because as we figured it out, as we know, she knows that Arlo is the one who tipped off Serafina. Arlo is... I'm going to say it. Arlo's pretty stupid in this situation. Like I said in my reaction, you do not just admit things flat out. Granted, it could be a moment of, hey, this is my aunt. Like, I'm not going to lie to my aunt. But he does just kind of say, like, how did you know that? And I just feel like that's really stupid. Like, I could see him trying to, even try to, say, what are you talking about? Or, not even try to deny it, but more so omit the truth, try and dance around it, like Sarah did with Nadia for a little bit. But he does ask how she knew, and she tells him that working at the bureau isn't high school, and that there are far more intelligent and powerful people than he can imagine. Arlo's met John. John's pretty fucking powerful, but if this isn't foreshadowing or a teaser at major villains or opponents that we're gonna run into later on from the bureau, I'm gonna be really disappointed, honestly. I mean, I just feel like we know what Orin is capable of. Orin is clearly a threat, and Orin may or may not be on par with Valerie, but we don't really know. And then there's Leon, and then of course there's also Jane. That could maybe be a reference to Jane, but nonetheless, if we don't start seeing some 7+ high rankers in the Bureau of Authority, Uru, come on. Nonetheless, she does also mention that him helping her is an abuse of power, which clearly we know is bullshit based on all that she's done. Yeah, like I said in my reaction, I honestly like how much of a villain Uru is making Valerie, and I honestly think it's incredibly well done. Valerie is a person who we clearly know that Arlo is very attached to, has been very close to Arlo since his childhood. But in moments where Arlo is asking his aunt, don't you think we're a bit hard on people sometimes? Can't we give more fair punishments? Valerie is literally wiping blood off of her hands. Blood that is most likely from an innocent vigilante trying to make a difference in the world because the authorities refuse to. Valerie is an incredible villain, and I love how the things that Valerie says, I personally feel Uru does a lot better job at as to when she's written characters like Arlo in the past. Because Arlo's moments of clarity or Arlo's moments of dialogue in the past, they felt unearned. They felt really, they made me angry because it just felt so out of character. It felt undeserved. It felt unearned. It felt undeveloped. But with Valerie, we clearly know how evil and how deep in the bureau she is. We know what she's willing to do. Just the very episode ago, she told Arlo, "Shut your damn mouth. I won't hesitate to throw you in prison too." But now, she's saying, "I'm trying to protect you." And it's really, really funny. It's really interesting to see Valerie's dynamic here. Because Valerie even mentions, these people are, like, the people you're associating with are terrorists, Arlo. Like, why, like, that's another thing, sorry. Going back to abuse of power, Valerie is part of a secret branch of the Bureau of Authority. How well known that is within the Bureau, we don't know yet. I have a feeling we'll learn soon, or at least in Season 3. But Valerie is part of an organization in the Bureau that is solely dedicated to not only letting mid-tiers terrify low-tier districts so that they can test out a drug that is specifically so they can take down vigilantes who are trying to make a difference and protect weaker people. A job that the Bureau of Authority should itself be doing. An abuse of power. Valerie warns Arlo that he abused his power when she and everyone else at the Bureau are doing much worse things. It's really interesting, and I love Valerie as a villain, honestly. Now, Valerie then says, like Valerie said, she's trying to protect Arlo, and thanks to his plan, even though it didn't work out and Serafina escaped, he can still be covered for it since she said it's his plan. As they continue to argue, Arlo says that they could have tried to negotiate harder with Serafina. They shouldn't have just attacked her like that. Valerie slaps Arlo. Slaps him across the face. And it's, again, a very, very interesting scene to watch. This is the second time I think we've seen a family member truthfully, violently, intentionally hit their family member. The first was with Seraph on screen, not in flashbacks. The first was when Nerissa hit Serafina way back when, and that shook Serafina a little bit. This time, Arlo is getting a taste of that medicine. I don't think that she damages Arlo, but she does knock his head back, whereas we've seen attacks from people like John literally do nothing and Arlo is still standing. When Valerie slaps Arlo, his face moves. He's shooken up. He's surprised. Valerie then tells Arlo, these people you associate with, like, why do you care about them? What have they done for you? And honestly, I said in my reaction, and honestly, I don't agree with Valerie, but I do think she does ask an incredibly fair question. What has everyone done for Arlo? What have they truly done? They've saved Arlo's lives countless times, but they saved his life in situations that he got into because of them. Some people brought up they're opening his eyes to things like this, and I can agree, but a lot of the times they're going about it in pretty awful ways. I can absolutely commend Remy for trying to bring Arlo to the light and show what an awful person Valerie is, but she did it in an incredibly insensitive and irrational way. She didn't tell him, I need to talk to you. Like, I know this is going to sound crazy. Please listen. I think your aunt is the one who killed Ray. She literally screamed at him in the school hallway, your aunt murdered Ray. She didn't try and do it. She didn't try and do it friendly. She did it in anger because she was so angry with Arlo for wanting to work at the bureau. I understand Remy's anger and her frustration. I do. But I can't say that she didn't try to convince Arlo incredibly poorly. John and Arlo. Arlo has also been bending his hands and knees, trying to save everyone, trying to warn everyone as much as he can from their punishment that's currently impending. And when he tries to warn Remy, she spits in his face and tells him that she doesn't actually do that. That's figuratively. But she tells him, I'm busy. I don't want to talk to you. Arlo has sacrificed a lot for everyone. And I've got to be honest. Yes, they're trying to open his eyes to the horrors of the world. But other than that, honestly, what has everyone done for Arlo? I'm going to be honest. I can think, just based on their history alone, and what taking into account everything else we've seen in the series, I imagine that Valerie has done a lot for Arlo. A lot, probably, most likely out of love. I think now that she's seen that influence, that her influence is being broken up on, is being shattered upon, that she has on him, I think a few things may be out of anger. But there is one thing that Valerie does say that I'm honestly not sure if she's sincere or not. I can't really decide for sure. But Valerie does still say, I'm trying to protect you. And honestly, she's an awful person. And even though she said she'll throw Arlo in prison, I can't imagine it'd be easy for Valerie to see her nephew go down a path that she knows leads down, that she knows she may have to be the one to take action on. Valerie then ends off the episode telling Arlo, I can't protect you forever. And Arlo is left alone in his thoughts. And she brings up a good point. Arlo can't be protected forever. Arlo shouldn't be protected forever. Arlo has to think and grow on his own. And he clearly can't do that with her around. He can grow around the others, but as I mentioned with Elaine and Ison, Arlo is involved with people who are getting involved in incredibly dangerous things. Arlo can grow for the better with everyone else in the main cast as a party member, but that can also be incredibly dangerous when Arlo has had near-death experiences multiple times at this point because he's chosen to follow along with everyone else and to have their back. This episode is really good, and although I will say, the fight, if it is the last fight of Season 2, nowhere near as good as John versus the Royals or John versus Sarah, but the fight is really short, and the fight is setting a lot of things in motion. Sarah has now, according to them, attacked Bureau members. She's escaped, and she is still considered a terrorist criminal. Arlo is most likely getting cleared, and Valerie is most likely trying to protect him. And this episode also brings up a lot of questions. And this episode is pretty good, honestly. Is it one of the best episodes in Season 2? Probably. The conversation that Valerie has with Arlo is really good. And I like that Arlo stands his ground against his aunt, even though he gets backlash for it. Arlo is on a very interesting path right now. And Uru, I know I've said in the past that you really should have focused on developing Arlo if you wanted to make the turn that you did. And honestly, even though we don't have that from Season 1, I honestly do love how you've handled the new Arlo that we have now. So, with all that being said, guys, I'll give this episode a level 8.5. Because the fight is really short, and that is a bit disappointing, honestly. But the conversations that happen in this chapter and the story beats that are set now because of this chapter are incredible. So, with all that being said, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. And as always, everyone, see you, Space Cowboy.